energizer for you that will be presented by Ms. Limia Dewan. If I could request you to come up on stage. She is the head of the Disability and Ethnic Minority Program for BRAC. Thank you, Limia.
Good afternoon. I think everybody is very health break. I don't know that everybody is healthy or not. So can we stand up all except Mohsin? Mohsin can do what we can. So I think Mohsin can hear me. And Bhaskarda is here. Okay. So very easy exercise. I can, because it's a youth, everyone want to become a youth. So raise your hand like this and say, Rugal. Again, Rugal. And jump. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes, we can do. Thank you.
Hopefully that has energized everyone. Now, the jumping I'm sure helped. So today we'll be talking about future of work for youth. And as we talk about this, I think one of the things that come up very frequently is youth employment. And how do we ensure that we're preparing youth for the future that beholds them? So here we have our 3 panelists. Who will be talking about certain aspects related to the work they do for youth. I have Tasmiah here who will be starting off in terms of talking about the role of informal market in engaging youth. Bickey will be talking about the role of technology in terms of youth employment. And Kubendran will be talking about the role of enablers in terms of matching youth with employment. So we'll start off with Tasmiah first. We'll finish actually off the presentations, and then we will get on to a panel discussion, hopefully with a lot of questions from the audience. Yeah?
Thanks, Farzana. So I work for BRAC as a head of program in skills, and it's been a year. And understanding the informal markets in terms of how we are training people through the informal markets is basically what I've been learning about BRAC's program. And this is sort of to shed light on what we're doing currently with the markets. And then towards the end, we'll talk about issues of, okay, what's next, or how does the future hold? So in terms of the challenge, we'll start off with a video. If we can have that quickly and if it plays.
Welcome to Bangladesh, the country with one of the biggest and youngest working age populations in the world. 2 out of 5 young people from this group are not in education, employment, or training. 75% of organizations report they can't find enough skilled workers. Not enough young people are skilled, and the ones that are do not have the right type of skills. A lot of people end up doing low-skilled work, and many are exploited. 14-year-old Amina works as a maid in a house. She dropped out of school when she was 11 because her parents could not pay her school fees. She is mostly alone, does not have many options, and is vulnerable to abuse. Her parents feel the best way to deal with it is to get her married. This is the case for many girls. Apprenticeships could provide an alternative. What if Amina could start an apprenticeship instead? Not a traditional one where young people are often exploited. She gets hands-on training from a master craftsperson who has been trained in how to train according to national standards. The master craftsperson is paid to train Amina. Her learning is structured, so she is skilled in just 6 months. All of this in a healthy, safe, and fun environment. Amina learns how to manage money, speaking to customers, essential English, social and labor rights. With this kickstart, Amina now has plenty of options. She can continue working, she can get a job somewhere else, she can start her own business. And she is now family member with an own voice. By working with employers and young people, the entire market is improving. So in a country where 8 out of 10 jobs are in the informal markets, young people can change the game in Bangladesh. Invest. Young people will take care of the rest.
The presentation slides, please.
Welcome
All right.
to Bangladesh, the country with one of the biggest and youngest.
Okay, there has to be a glitch. I mean, it's video. Yeah, right. Okay. So, you understand what the challenges are. So we're not going to focus a lot on what the challenges are. We all understand that in Bangladesh, 1 out of 3 of Bangladeshis are youth, but 2.2 million people join work every year, and most of it, like 85% of it, is in the informal economy. So if we need to understand how we skill the youth for the future or next best thing or understanding what they need, it has to have the informal economy on board. Apart from that, we also know that a lot of our kids are out of school, they're not in education or in training. Women employment is also an issue. About 35% of our women join the labor. And on the other hand, when we look at the demand side, the businesses always complain that we don't get enough skilled workers. And the university graduates are also now unemployed a lot, like 11.2% as we know it. So all of these challenges being part of youth, the skills development, and also the future of Bangladesh. So keeping all of this in mind, BRAC wanted to work with the informal economy and also bring in youth who has less access to education and skills. As a result, we've started a training program in 2015 with hands-on apprenticeships and also institution-based training to look at better jobs for people who don't have access to proper jobs and markets and who has lack of access to education and training. And of course, this focuses on SDGs with our 2 strategic partners, Australian Aid and UK Aid. So you've understood the model, right? It's a pretty interesting model where we're looking at a small shop owner who's the master craftsperson, and he or she teaches on-the-job training, gives on-the-job training to a young adolescent who's between 14 to 18 years. We have theoretical training, soft skills training, and placement. And I want to sort of focus on the soft skills training because technical training is relatively easy. You provide a technical skills and then they get jobs. But for future of work, I think what needs to be stressed is the soft skills training. How do you communicate? What sort of life skills do you learn? How do you cope with the environment you're in? Financial literacy, seeking and keeping your job, things like that. So for our students, we do this once a week, 2 hours. They go to a classroom and they learn this. Since 2015, we've covered almost 46 districts, and these are the trades that you see. These are mostly based on the markets. So we go to a market, and then we assess the needs of the markets, and then based on that, we identify the small business owners who will then train our students. And right now, we have about 24 plus trades that we provide training in the informal market. The other thing that I wanted to stress is data. The data-driven decision-making has played a big role in our program. So for example, when we go to these markets and we go to the students, everything is captured in TerraWorks, we call it. It's our sort of MIS, which is completely operation-focused. And based on that, we've been able to kind of make decisions that are efficient and effective for us. For example, the business owners who are more prone to bring in people with disability into the training, trades that women would pick rather than being a tailor or being part of the beauty salon. One example is woodworking. Women love and actually prefer to do this kind of work, and it's also high in, they also get high in salary. So these are the things that sort of give us kind of ideas or new ideas where we can tap into markets that are a bit challenging for people with disability and women. In terms of the impact of this program, it has more impact on women than men. 62% reduction in child marriage, and of course we've enhanced empowerment for women. And the impact is higher on women because otherwise they would get married, as the video shows, because when parents don't see any value in their girls, they sort of think that it's better to get them married off. A few examples that I wanted to show is, because we did this model, we are also sort of scaling that up with different other programs. So for example, we have partnership with microfinance, where the students, after they receive the training, in 4 or 5 years' time, they also want to start up their own business. So as a result, we provide them with a training which is based on completely mentorship and loan providing for entrepreneurs. So we have 200 such entrepreneurs who have received the training and has received the loan and now are business owners. Gen U is another scale-up example where UNICEF has identified this apprenticeship program, we call it STAR, this program as one of the solutions, one of the 9 solutions where we are not only going to scale this up for Bangladesh, but all over the world. So this is also another way of looking at apprenticeship as success. And lastly, I want to sort of talk about what the future means in terms of looking at the informal market and the role of informal market in skilling the youth. So we need to sort of understand this formal-informal linkages, focus more on coping mechanisms, problem solving, critical thinking, and also jobs that are not going to be automated, for example, care work. Customization of standards and assessments, how do people have quick uptake on training, not really very lengthy processes, but short and sweet. And of course, other job-related services like health, savings, and other services that would help our job seekers. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tasmiah. I will now hand over to Bickey for talking about the role of technology in terms of youth employment.
All right, I'm going to stand. I'm going to follow Kambai from earlier. See if this works. Okay. All right, thanks, Farzana. So I'm Bickey. I work at Google, and I've been at the company 10 years. And I'm here to talk about Kormo. It's a project I've been working on for the last couple of years. And it's an app that is actually, the problem it solves, or the problem it's trying to solve, is actually pretty straightforward. We want to help people find jobs and build careers. And what I'm going to talk about today is a little bit about our journey. We think it's pretty interesting. Some of the product principles that have driven how we build the app. And if you think about technology, it's all about how do we build a tech product to solve a really big problem, and Tasmiah kind of articulated really well. And then talk a little bit about where we're going next. We launched the app, just so you know, officially in Bangladesh at the end of September last year. And we've been testing it for about a year, 14 months. In that time, we've connected over 25,000 jobs. We have hundreds of thousands of monthly active users in Bangladesh already. And we've just started testing in Indonesia as well. So I'd love to talk to anybody after this about partnering and working together as well. And we definitely feel we need to learn a lot more from development practitioners, not just in Bangladesh, but from all over the world. So why did we want to why did we want to work in this space? So I'm originally from Bangladesh, and the Kormo co-founders, there are 3 of us. All 3 of us were brought up here. Actually, all of us were raised in Dhaka. And we realized that finding a job is really hard. It was really hard for us to find work after graduating from university abroad. But actually the way that people find work hasn't really changed that much. It's actually still really hard. If you're a young person in Dhaka or a young person anywhere in Bangladesh, to find employment is just really, really tough. And the reason it's like that is because the way people get connected to jobs hasn't really changed that much. So here I have a couple of images of, these are real life kind of photos of us in the field trying to understand how employers hire. And the idea of a CV box is actually still, for some businesses, the #1 way that they hire. My favorite is actually the one all the way on my right. It's the CB box, which is particularly interesting. So if you think about it, in the retail space, even in Bangladesh, you're seeing a lot of disruption, transportation, healthcare. But even with online job portals, all they really are directories of jobs online, and then the user has to go and do all of the work. They need to know what they're looking for, they need to apply. A lot of users that we've spoken to have told us that once they apply, they never hear back. They don't know why they didn't get the job. Often they don't even hear back at all. So those are all the kinds of things that we thought we could try and fix. Oops. So when we started working on Kormo, and this was about 2 years ago, we wanted to explore and really understand the problem a little bit more. So here on the left, you actually have the first jobs that we ever connected, and those were actually in Madhupur, which is in the Tangail district north of Dhaka. We were actually staying at a BRAC CDM like this, working with BRAC. And the first jobs we connected were in the construction space. And the reason we decided to focus a little bit more there, and actually initially we started building Kormo for that space, was if you think about day laborers, people looking for short-term work, it was even harder for them. Every day they're hustling, trying to find a job, negotiating salary. They weren't getting paid. Benefits were really hard to come by. So we really wanted to solve the problem for them. We then launched in Dhaka as an SMS and voice-based product, serving the day laborer needs. And over the course of about 6 months, we were able to probably address about 7 to 8 day laborer markets in Dhaka, and we were connecting about 100+ jobs every single day. The problem was we weren't able to scale it up because unfortunately smartphone penetration was quite low within that segment. So very quickly we pivoted, and this is about early last year sometime, and we started focusing on young people. Young people have smartphones. They also have challenges finding work. And we felt that there was an opportunity for us to deploy an app to really serve their needs. And I'll talk a bit more about that in a second. So we came up with this concept of urban jobs, and we really made up this term. It was, how do we connect young people to the work that they're looking for? And again, young people looking for software engineering jobs, young people looking for marketing executive roles, those were already there. But what about folks looking for temporary jobs as a retail sales assistant, delivery workers? You saw all this, we were seeing all this growth in e-commerce and all this growth in BPO and data entry roles. We wanted to be able to create an app to connect people to those jobs, and the demand was really, really high there. So now to talk a little bit about the key kind of product principles that have really driven how we build the app. The first one was, when you join Kormo, what you really do is you build a CV. That CV acts as your kind of personal reputation that you can take from job to job, and it powers your entire experience in the app. That to us was the most fundamental thing that we wanted to give every single person who joins the Kormo community. The second one was, now that we know a little bit about you through your CV, and now that you're starting to engage with the app and we're able to understand some of your interests and some of your needs, we're able to personalize job recommendations for you. So as a user on Kormo, you don't need to search for the job. The job recommendations will actually come to you, and you get this personalized feed of jobs. And based on how you click and how you interact with the app, our algorithm learns and will continue to personalize those recommendations for you more and more. This to us is one of the biggest game changers. It's really hard for young people in particular to know what jobs they might be good at, to know what jobs might be available to them. So providing those recommendations and learning from the interactions in the app has helped us optimize further and further and connect more people to jobs and really drive satisfaction amongst our users. The other thing, and I know Tasmiah talked about skills development, we feel that this is a massive opportunity. There's a huge ecosystem of people who are doing skills development and training online and offline, but what we wanted to do was figure out a way that we could connect that to a user and their interests and their needs from a jobs perspective. So again, based on your CV, based on your interest and your experience around looking for work, we recommend training in the form of videos, articles, and tests and certifications, all directly in the app. A really good example is, if you want to do a sales job on Kormo, we're able to push a Sales 101 or Sales 102 certification to you, that once you do that, we know that you're more qualified for that job, and employers love that as well. So again, kind of connecting and integrating learning directly with the demand side or the employer needs is a big driver of kind of how we feel we can start to help solve this problem. And then the last one, this is more of a feature, it's not really a product principle, but discovery of training and discovery of jobs is something that is really hard when everything is offline, or really hard when the burden is entirely on the user. You need to go and search on Google. You need to go to a job board and find that information. You need to ask your brother or sister for a job. What we're able to do is when a job becomes available, if we think you might be suitable for that job, we send you a notification and say, hey, have you thought about doing this job? And then the user can just immediately apply directly from the notification, and that kind of end-to-end kind of fulfillment is done really quickly. In the same way, we're able to say, hey, you might be suitable for this job, but you need to read this article, or you need to do this test. And if you do this test, you could get this job and you could earn a little bit more money that way. And again, those kinds of linkages are happening very, very seamlessly through this kind of mobile smartphone app experience. Something that I'd love you all to think about as you're trying to solve this problem with regards to skills development and employability for the youth. So this is the last slide. We're really excited about the growth we're seeing. As I said, we've already connected over 25,000 jobs. That number is growing every single month. There is a massive demand from businesses to hire. There's a massive need from the supply side, the workers, to find jobs. And Kormo is one way that we can make those linkages and make those matches happen. Like any startup, we're very early, and all we're really focused on, I think one of the presenters said earlier, it was all about creating value. That's kind of what we're looking to do. We've built a product that we know at least some people really, really love. People are finding work, and there's some examples here. They're earning more money. They're saying how they've become independent now. Our goal over the next year or so is to really scale that up. How do we build a product that more people love? And the people that love us, how do they love us even more? So much so that they can recommend it to their friends and we can grow. So as I said, we're looking to launch in Indonesia very soon. We have a lot to learn about this space. We'd love to hear from anybody and would love to take questions later in the panel. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bickey. Now I would like to hand over to Kuben to talk about Harambee.
Thank you. I'll stand as well, even though I'm half as tall as Bickey. Yeah, my name is Kubendran Nair. I'm from Harambee Youth Employment Accelerator in Africa. And like I told the passport control agent yesterday, I promise I am African. So speaking of Africa, as Mr. Asif Saleh said yesterday, Africa is a very young continent. It's the youngest continent. In fact, by 2030, there will be more young people entering the workforce in Africa than the rest of the world combined. We already have high unemployment rates among youth, and South Africa is the highest in the world. So the problem is big, and it's only going to get bigger. So Harambee started in 2011 in South Africa. And really at that stage, we weren't as ambitious to say we are going to solve youth unemployment for Africa. We just wanted to figure out one puzzle. And the puzzle was this. In South Africa at the time, we had more than 300,000 entry-level vacancies every year. And what we were finding was that those vacancies were going unfilled in the large part, while we had more than 6 million young people unemployed. So that didn't make sense. We spoke to employers and we spoke to young people. When we spoke to employers, we found that they didn't trust the education system. When they were trying to de-risk for hires, for new hires, they were looking at work experience. So even if you were a retailer hiring a cashier, you wanted to hire a cashier from another retailer. Where they did look at education, they often then placed additional demands and asked for more than they needed. So similarly, for a cashier, we had a retailer who, because a cashier needs to be able to speak English and count, they were looking for people with high grades in maths and English. And that didn't make sense. I mean, why do you need to know calculus and Shakespeare to be a cashier? When we spoke to young people, we found that their qualifications just didn't accurately represent their potential. We found that, yes, there was a skills gap because our education system wasn't building them. they didn't have any networks into the economy. So if you think about most of our young people, their family and friends were either unemployed or they had elementary jobs like domestic workers or security guards. So no one to really advise them. And the cost of job seeking was just too high. A young person would spend the equivalent of around $70 a month just looking for work on transport, airtime, data, and printing costs. So these were the exclusionary barriers. Harambee then came in to try and solve for this, to help young people become more effective work seekers, to help drive down the cost of work seeking, and then to tell employers, instead of looking at education and experience, trust us to find you the right match. One of it was learning potential. So we believe that the young person's university, their real university, is the workplace. So how can we do just enough to get the young person through the door and then help them get the job? But really what's important there is learning potential. How can this young person learn? And what we show here is that if employers use their typical proxy, which is math scores, by screening out those with low numeracy, you are screening out effectively 80% of young people who have high learning potential. And more than that, a young person is more than just their education and experience. If you're looking at just education and experience on a CV, you're looking at one dimension. In fact, how we represent candidates and what we've learned about their employability is across 6 dimensions, which is shown here. And we have tools and assessments that are able to accurately map a candidate across all 6 dimensions and look at an opportunity across all 6 dimensions. And our technology platform that we've built is able then to match those 2 together to find if a candidate is the right match for the opportunity or if we need to bridge the gap and where those gaps are. So talking about the technology platform, and rather than speaking about the technology, I'll give you an example. Just last week in South Africa, we launched our first fully digital bank. They've been leveraging a grocery retailer's store network of 730 stores all across the country, from very affluent suburbs to rural outlying areas. And we've been able to help them staff up over 2 months against all 730 stores just over the phone. So a young person, say Nelly in outlying Limpopo region, would then join on our very low-cost, low-touch Mobi site. Within 48 hours, she gets a call from a contact center agent at Harambee. That call helps build up her profile and color in that employability map. It also serves as an over-the-phone assessment of communication ability. And then we present her the interview and match her to the opportunity. So far, the results, we have a network of more than 500,000 young people that we've supported with work readiness interventions. We've pathwayed young people into more than 95,000 opportunities, and we want to scale that up by 2022 to 1.5 million young people into more than 500,000 opportunities. In the last year, we've launched in Rwanda and are testing our model in Rwanda and trying to scale up there as well as launch in a few more African cities. So that's us. Thank you.
Thank you, Kuben. I wonder if this mic works. As we start the discussion. Perfect. Thank you so much for the presentations. I'm sure it was fascinating for everyone to learn about the work each of you are doing. I think it was, for me, definitely was really interesting to see how Harambee is connecting employers to youth and helping them to realistically understand their potential candidates, therefore opening up opportunities for more young people for jobs. It was definitely interesting to hear Bickey talk about how Kormo is solving the problem of access to information, essentially, right? Because now, the way youth are looking for work is basically through asking people mostly. Maybe there are some platforms online that they look at, but essentially giving a platform like this that's giving them access to so much information, it makes sense when you look at kind of the comments of 3 people that you posted. I think one girl had said, I'm independent now, I don't need anyone to tell me where the jobs are. So I think that's very powerful. And again, coming back to Tasmiah in terms of the role of informal market, again, in the global south, 8 out of 10 jobs are in the informal market. So unless we're engaging the stakeholders of the informal market to engage youth, I think we'll be missing out on a big picture. So kind of continuing on this discussion, as we talk about the future of work for youth, you've touched upon this, but it'll be nice to again hear what are the challenges that you see? Because the markets are ever evolving, requirement of skills are always changing. So how do you think we can address this constantly changing environment for youth? Who would like to answer?
Yeah, so if I can talk about some of the challenges in South Africa. So part of the jobs is coders and data scientists, where we already have a skills shortage for, and we know that the demand is only going to increase. And currently the only pathway into that is universities. So you have to have a 3 or 4 year university degree. And we have a very low graduate rate. So if 100 kids had to start school now, in 18 years, only 4 of them would graduate. And very few in a tech degree, particularly women. So we realize there's inaccessibility to such opportunities. And what we've been piloting now by bringing kind of government and the industry sector together is different pathways. So we've partnered with one organization called We Think Code that develops coders into a software engineering qualification over 24 months, which includes about 8 months of in-company work. And another operator called the Data Science Academy, which runs a course for 6 months in data science. So you may not be as qualified as someone who's gone through a 3 or 4 year degree, but it's enough to get you into the door and into that opportunity. But it's been important in getting buy-in from the industry and employers, especially the big employers, to say, this is what we're doing, come pilot with us, come learn with us. We'll help you in getting the right candidates. And they are committed to taking in these candidates and helping us test the efficacy and effectiveness of these courses. So trying to find alternate pathways into these jobs for the next revolution.
So I think, clearly there are a number of challenges, and I think if you look at the kind of higher tier jobs, the challenges are very different to the way you would look at jobs for, let's say, the vast majority of folks that are working in the informal sector or what is known as the blue collar sector, or the way we've termed it, even urban jobs. I'll pick 2 that I think are pretty, we see all the time. I think, and we've tried to build product to serve those needs. The first one is, again, just around that validated reputation. We've seen so many people come to us and say that when they go for a job interview or when they're about to get another job, they have to start from square one again, because the experience and the learnings that they've gained from their previous role or whatever, their life before that, isn't validated or isn't accepted by the next employer unless they have a personal reference, which is an uncle or an aunt or a relative. And that's not a single use case. That is widespread the way people hire. You speak to anybody in this building who has hired in Bangladesh, they've typically hired through personal references. And we want to solve that by allowing somebody to build a validated, portable reputation on Kormo, so that when you do tests, when you apply for jobs, when you get jobs, all of that is validated by our system. So when you go to an employer, they'll be like, oh yeah, it's validated by Kormo. And we're seeing that happen in the, thousands of times a month, really, as we connect jobs. I think the other one is definitely around skills development. I think there's a skills mismatch clearly for data scientists and software engineers. That's a big, big problem to solve. But in the kind of more practical sense, there's also a skills mismatch when it comes to training people with navigation skills so that they can be an Uber driver. And again, those are the kind of things that we're trying to do these are what I think are quick wins that we're working on. We'd love to work with more people on them. But again, we have a simple test in Kormo that's called Navigation 101. And I remember, because the first iteration of this, I designed it myself. And it's just basic questions like, if you were to go on a delivery route, and then one of the deliveries got canceled, which option would you choose, A, B, C, or D? That test, it was maybe 10 questions, allowed us to better qualify biker drivers for local on-demand delivery companies really, really easily, actually. So again, this kind of skills mismatch is, I think, another major challenge, but there are some simple solutions that you can kind of adopt. We're trying a few that can really help address it.
Great. Really interesting points, guys. So I wanted to touch on issues of soft skills again. So for example, right now when we look at the informal economy and jobs like tailoring and electricians and RMG workers who enter the market with very minimal skills, and then we train them for 6 months, and then they do get a higher salary. But then what happens to these young workers after 30 years? Or somebody who's now 8 years old or 10 years old, what happens to them when they become 25? We really don't know, I mean, what the future holds in 2050. So the idea, I think, that is important to also kind of hone is that how do we teach people the coping mechanisms, the mechanisms to kind of navigate their ways through lives, to pathways which will give them skills, because it's ever changing. The workforce will keep on changing, and it's not about steady jobs anymore for anyone. And let's say, for if we take an example for RMG workers, what happens when all of these jobs get automated? What will these boys and girls do? So I think it's not about the hard skills for me, that's the toughest part, or matching supply and demand, because we sort of have an idea about it. But in terms of teaching people the psychological skills and ability to kind of pave their own way into this system is more critical, I think.
Farzana, I've got one more. I just thought of this. So it's also not all about the job seeker. Employers also have to step up, and they definitely are. But I'll give you one really clear example. And again, this might be slightly controversial, but those of you who know me, you know I don't shy away from that. I don't know if anybody's ever seen a CV of a typical job applicant in Bangladesh, but typically it includes mother's name, father's name, religion, how many children they have, when they got married, all of these things. And when we were building Kormo, we were like, we're not going to include any of those, because that's just not, I mean, the diversity and inclusion is just not there. You shouldn't have to know if somebody's married or not, what their religious status is, if you're hiring them. So when we first went to market with the Kormo CV to large employers here in Bangladesh, we had HR professionals tell us, oh, we need religion, we need marital status. And we're like, why do you need those? And what we did was like, we pushed back. We went to the CEOs of those companies, and these are large companies, and we said, do you really need this stuff? And the CEO's like, oh my God, I can't believe we actually still ask those and need those in our CVs. So with that kind of top-down buy-in, we were able to eradicate across many companies the need or the perceived need to ask those questions or to capture that information in CVs. And again, that's the kind of thing, like, again, we were able to do it for a few hundred employers, but that's the kind of thing that needs to happen widespread, so young people entering the workforce are kind of qualified and assessed in a more inclusive way. So again, I would definitely push that cause a little bit.
Great. I think now we can open up for questions from the audience, because I'm sure there are plenty. They're going to be up on the screen. Yes, there are tons. So we can go one by one. Yeah? Let's start with Tasmiah, the first one.
Can select soft learnings help, where did it go? Oh.
Second one, yeah.
Learnings help or link rural women in safe migration through which BD's remittance info will increase. Yes, I mean, I think so. So the question is, can soft skills learning help or link rural women? I think definitely. This is, and I feel like we don't stress this enough when it comes to skills training, and the focus always moves into technical, vocational skills. But soft skills need to be a big part of the agenda, where we need to teach people or train people in terms of how to communicate, how to navigate, how to do networking. And when it comes to safe migration, we all know that Women that are going as domestic workers abroad do face a lot of challenges, abuse, rape, and violence, and that can be largely mitigated, I think, if they knew where they're going, where they should go when they go to a foreign land. So I think largely information gap, not so much soft skills, but soft skills along with information gap is there, and we need to definitely tackle this. And yes, soft skills can be a way.
Nice. I think the second question is for Kuben. How similar are the youth employment needs in Bangladesh and South Africa? What is different? So, yeah, you want to take that? Yeah.
I'll take a stab because all I know about Bangladesh youth employment is probably from this session. But correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems to me that the Bangladesh market, the economy is mostly informal, and there's not that much formal opportunities. Whereas in South Africa, for example, South Africa has quite an active and large formal economy. So there's quite some demand from the formal economy, which means a lot of demand for graduates as well. We're learning in Rwanda, so Rwanda is quite different. Rwanda is probably similar to Bangladesh in that way. Rwanda, more than 90% of the economy is informal. And so it'd be interesting, I don't know if you have the same phenomenon in Bangladesh, in that because of that, so there's low demand for graduates. And what we're seeing in Rwanda is that because young people who graduate can't get formal economy opportunities, they just tend to keep studying. So you have more graduates, more honors, masters, PhDs who just have never worked. And that's just a kind of interesting phenomenon in Rwanda, which is quite the opposite of South Africa, where you have a lot of demand but very little supply. Where in Rwanda you have low supply for graduates, but low demand for graduates, but very high supply. I don't know much more about the Bangladesh market.
No, but you're right. I think unemployment is a major issue among the higher graduates. And you're absolutely right in terms of targeting that. I think the next question is for Kormo, and it's an interesting one. How does Kormo stand apart from BD jobs?
Yeah, sure. I think the next two are fairly similar. So how does Kormo stand apart from, I guess, your typical job board, online job board? And I think I said this earlier. If you think of what online job boards are, if you think about newspapers back in the day that listed available jobs, online job boards are, again, I don't want to discredit them entirely, but essentially it's a directory or a dictionary of jobs. You as the user have to find that dictionary or directory and then scour through available jobs. As the user, you need to know a lot. You need to know what jobs am I available for, what to search for. You need to then apply for them, and then the application then goes in a black hole, and you might not hear back, you might hear back. So there's a lot of user experience that we think could be worked on from the typical job board model. For Kormo, on the other hand, we're trying to, what we believe is solve a need for a massive potential user base of young people that are coming online every year, and finding a way to earn money, get a job, build a career is a big, big use case. And the way we feel we can solve that is not by giving them a directory of jobs, but by actually giving them a career assistant. And that career assistant, after it gets to know a little bit about you, recommends jobs to you, and recommends learning and skills development content directly to you and matches those and continues to help you through your career. Again, it's still very early days. We might kind of iterate from that idea over time, but that's kind of what we're looking to do. I'd love to demo the app to anybody who wants to see it, or please download it and check it out. You'll need to build a CV though. But yeah, that's kind of how we hope to differentiate.
Okay. Thanks. I think the next question I can see is more, whoever wants to take it up. The question is, for sustainable future of jobs, it's crucial for industries to move up the global value chain alongside having skilled workers. And how can NGOs help shape the agenda? So if any of you want to take it up. Tasmiah?
Taking a shot. It's very important to have industry buy-in, and I think right now industries do understand the need for skilled workers and they do demand it, but I think they're also not 100% ready to invest in skilled workers. So for example, when we go talk to formal industries, it's actually easier to talk to informal market players, so small business owners are willing and able to help. But for larger industries, when it comes to training, investment, supporting with heavy machinery, which is expensive, at times it is about, okay, then who shares the cost? Will the government train? Will the NGOs do it? Will the donors do it? So there's a lot of questions. And industries do train as much as they need, but then it's not enough for kind of themselves, not really improving the overall ecosystem. So I think they definitely, there has to be more buy-in from the industry for skilled workers. And I think NGOs can definitely play a role of an enabler. So for example, right now, if people get trained, there's also a displacement issue. So people who are trained get those jobs, and the people who are not trained then are unemployed. And that is the case. But then if we bring in people who actually need the jobs, bringing in that inclusivity, bringing in access to women, people with disability, people who don't have access, and supporting government and industries to kind of focus on those people more, I think there we can sort of have a win-win situation. So I think they can play a role of a facilitator more than a service provider.
I mean, I do have a follow-up question to that. I do want to ask, when we talked about challenges in terms of future of work for youth, are the challenges different for men versus women? What has been your experience so far through your work?
Yeah, definitely we see a difference. Men are far more likely to get into work and into employment than women are. And when we looked at it, the biggest reason was just time for work seeking. So more than 50% of women spend on average 5 hours a day on unpaid care work, which is looking after the children, looking after the home, looking after elderly at home. So they have much less time to actually look for work. The other big challenge is in networks. So we encourage young people to volunteer, to get involved in the community, to get involved in sports, to build networks, but also to build their networking skills. And that's a barrier for women because, to quote from another speaker earlier, it's not really a safe space. So to get out and to do all of that, and then when they are looking for work, especially in community, often they are asked for sexual favors. So it's a space that's proven to be really dangerous for women and already a barrier for women getting into work.
Seen anything in terms of Kormo?
Yeah, we've definitely had a lot of interesting insights when it comes to how we serve women. I gave you the example of CVs. We've had a lot of women who have told us about them being interviewed for jobs, and the hiring manager flat out asked them, so when do you plan on having kids? Because that would influence their hiring decision. So those are the kind of disadvantages, unfortunately, that women are facing that, again, we as a collective community have to proactively address. We're trying to do it with a simple product feature where things like marital status don't help, are not part of your screening or how many children you have. But there are definitely challenges. I'll give you another quick insight. I do think technology, though, can kind of cut through some of those barriers. We are very, very motivated to bring women into the Kormo community and help them find work. But while I can't share the exact numbers, the number of women we have versus the number of men we have on our platform is, it's a fraction of that. That being said, the number of women who, for the female contingent in our community, the usage is much, much higher. And actually the success rate of them getting work is much, much higher. And the theory we have is because for the kind of jobs that we're offering, retail, delivery workers, BPO workers, they're not able to just pound the streets, similar to what Kuben said, and just kind of go into the field and look for those jobs. So when they find out about Kormo, they're able to get all of that sitting at home. So again, that's a way that technology can kind of overcome those barriers. But we're definitely always looking for ways to partner with groups who can help us reach more women so that we can offer them value that they might not otherwise be able to get through the existing kind of challenges that they face.
Thanks. Yeah.
Sorry, I just wanted to support what Bickey just said. Because I talked about the challenge, but Harambee then has become the network. So by becoming the network for young people, and also for being the place where we find the opportunities and then present it to the young people, that's already made a difference to the gender gap. So in the general population, about 60% of the workforce is men versus women, whereas it's the opposite in the Harambee network. So 60% of our placements are women, 40% are men.
Wow, that's excellent.
Just wanted to add one quick point. In terms of the informal economy, of course, a lot of perception issues. So mostly for tailors and beauty salons, women are hired, and women also prefer doing those jobs. But when it comes to electricians or market owners, they'll be like, no, women can't. Can women really be an electrician? Have you ever seen that? So I think, we need to look at perception issues, not only for the marketplaces and business people who are hiring women, but also in the households, because parents are also a big barrier when it comes to their daughters going and working in non-conventional occupations, and largely the overall perception issues on skills, and then women can do certain work. So obviously women do face a lot more barriers than men when it comes to technical jobs.
Great point. Well, I have a placard saying time's up. So in that case, I guess when you say time's up, is it fully time's up, or is it 5 more minutes? Time's up, great, okay. All right, so I guess we're not able to take any more questions, but despite of that, it's been a fascinating discussion. So thank you so much, panelists, and thank you, audience, for all these fantastic questions you've asked. Thank you.